Good evening, and thank you for welcoming us to the Interfaith Center Awards dinner. My name is Brigid McGinn, and I'm an organizer with Gays Against Guns. On June 12th, in 2016, I was returning home from Fire Island, a safe haven at the beach for our LGBTQ community, when I heard about the Pulse nightclub massacre. I arrived in New York City, went to the Stonewall Inn. The streets were packed because the Stonewall is another safe place for this queer community to gather in celebration, in protest, and on this day, in shock and mourning. People who were activists since the AIDS epidemic stepped up, spoke up, and lent their expertise to the crowds that were there. And in that moment, Gays Against Guns was formed. We were publicly introduced 2 weeks later at the New York City Pride March, where we presented the 49 human beings who were murdered in Orlando, Florida. Our human beings stand with us in silence everywhere we go. They take up space without a voice, each representing a victim of gun violence who can't be here because they were killed with a gun. On February 14th, 2018, Gays Against Guns was in the Hart Senate office building in Washington, D.C. We were giving out bloody valentines to senators who accept money from the NRA. When our phones started going off and messages about another massacre were coming in. The massacre was at Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida. Like many of us, Ryan Deach and Chris Grady have been indoctrinated into grassroots activism through tragedy. After their fellow students and teachers were murdered, the students proclaimed never again. A concrete and decisive call to action, and bless their hearts, they did believe that it was possible because they recognized the urgent need for gun reform. We commend Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School, the educators and administration there, for addressing the civic and cultural issues like the epidemic of gun violence in their students' curriculum, because these students were intellectually armed for a fight for sensible gun laws in the traumatic aftermath of the shooting at their school. The students unfortunately experienced firsthand the defenses and the vile attacks from the gun industry and the lawmakers who are supported by the NRA. The students organized the March for Our Lives. They spoke up, pleading through their tears, controlling and communicating their rage intelligently and efficiently, using their social media savvy to get lawmakers and voters to listen. But these grown-up corporate and political opponents to gun reform, they retaliated, and they tried to influence Americans to believe that these Parkland kids are naive and monochromatic, and that they are making adolescent demands from a place of white privilege, expecting immediate gratification on an issue that they are far too young to understand. These students from Parkland are far from that, and they have not backed down. They followed the money. and shamed businesses, as Gays Against Guns has been doing since our incarnation. And finally, they pushed it, and businesses began to drop their affiliations with the NRA. They reached out and put their spotlight on students of color and on other cities that have been living with gun violence as an urgent public health crisis in their communities for decades. As an educator, my philosophy is based on the pedagogy of listening. To listen is active. It's not a passive verb. Opening the door to find common ground for intersectionality is not always immediately apparent, and often we must listen hard through dialogue to find it. Gays Against Guns makes trips to gun shows to engage in conversation with gun owners and find common ground. The Parkland students are embarking on a journey to do the same. I look forward to seeing the progress the Road to Change bus will forge with their journey across the U.S. to listen and enter into dialogue with citizens who hold different views than they do about the right to bear arms. Gun violence invades safe and sacred spaces all over America, provoked by disharmony and fueled by the phenomenon that is the quest for power and money over morals, ethics, spirituality, and basic human engagement in our society. I am grateful to the Interfaith Society for inviting Gays Against Guns to join you because it is the work of all of us to overcome prejudice, violence, and misunderstanding. It is my honor to introduce and celebrate Ryan Deach and Chris Grady and the March for Our Lives youth movement this evening for their commitment to promoting human dignity, development, and peace as leaders of common sense gun law reform in America.